First of all, my name is Martin Falchuk. I'm the clinical chief of gastroenterology at this hospital, and I have made it a project to get to where we are today. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story as we proceed. But I want to welcome everybody for coming. I want to thank you all for being here. There are people in development that have been extremely helpful. Amy, Katrina, Chris Lapping. If I left anybody out, I'm sorry, but there has been a team involved in this project, and I'm very thankful and grateful to all of them for it. So now that we hear a lot of noise, you can understand why I wanted you to come closer. I don't think that truck is going to go away anytime soon. So I'll do my best to speak as loudly as I can. Oh, good. So why are we here today? Simple question. We're here today because William Meissner was here yesterday, and the other great people that have been here yesterday. That is the main reason we are here today. And the issue of remembering our past is so critical and important to me. Mr. Lowry has recently gone away. He was the president of the hospital when the Meissner Building went up, and I certainly wish to acknowledge his memory and his contributions as well. In the early 70s or so, this great building went up here. It was a wonderful building. It was 8 stories. It represented the culmination of a lot of work, and the pathology department was extremely lucky to have a leader at the time who was instrumental in getting this accomplished. Not much more than maybe 20 years later, that building came down. It was the saddest time of all of us walking back and forth from the Lowry building to the hospital to see that building come down. We had no idea why that building would come down. It was usable. It was a wonderful building. It had at least another 40 years in front of it, if not more, as the buildings around us can attest. But this was going up, and there was a need for that, and so we knew there was an imperative to move forward. And although it came down, our hearts and thoughts were still with it. One day, as I was coming out from the building to come to the hospital, there was this gigantic machine. It had a name. It was called Tyrannosaurus Rex. W-R-E-C-K-S, named after that famous dinosaur. And Tyrannosaurus Rex was a great big demolishing machine that had jaws as big as the old Tyrannosaurus Rex. It stood 8 stories high, and little by little it was demolishing this building. And as I was walking by, I saw the name Meissner on the building, and I said, what an ignominious end to Meissner. And I said, we can't let this happen. I picked up the phone and spoke to the president of the hospital at the time and said, look, this is happening. We just can't allow this to happen. And so there was some words exchanged, and they promised that they would come and take the lettering off the building, and that at some point in the future, that would be resurrected to honor Dr. Meissner's, at that time, contributions, and of course today his memory. That was approximately 9 years ago. Every year on the anniversary of that building coming down, I would pick up the phone and speak to yet another administration hospital. Because as you know, when the Deaconess Hospital merged with the Beth Israel Hospital, there was a tremendous amount of stress that occurred from the medical side, and fiscally the hospital suffered to the point where there were so many problems that this was probably the last thing on their mind. But as the gadfly does, I kept reminding people every year as the administrations changed from one to the next to the next to the next, that they had a commitment that they had made to bring this back in some way, at least in a symbolic way, to honor Dr. Meissner. And although the administrations came and went, I stayed, and I kept that memory going. Thank you. Finally, this year, William Meissner died, and I said, this is it. I called Paul Levy, and I said, here we are. The old man is now gone. Can we possibly get this done? And without hesitation, he said, I guess because of, you know what, it's about time, and I'm going to put Chris Lapping to work on this. And before long, I think that was January or so, a number of things happened which are coming to fruition today. I can't tell you how excited I am about this project. Kathy, Dr. Meissner's cousin, is here with us today, and I'm so happy that you're here representing the family. But I can't tell you how happy I am that we are here today dedicating this plaque to Dr. Meissner. It's extremely important to me. The reason why I took this project on isn't because I was such a good friend of Dr. Meissner. I barely knew him. I came here in '82. By that time, he had retired quite a long time ago. of course, I've been in the neighborhood, having been at the hospital across the way since '72. So I've been here a long enough time to have a memory. And what really drove me to this was the concept and understanding of this idea that I brought at the start of my little conversation, and that is that we are here today because of they who were here yesterday. And if we don't remember them, then how are we going to tell our future generations of colleagues and friends and doctors that they need to remember the past, because that's where we are from. So again, thank you very much for coming. I'm sure that you'll appreciate this plaque. One little additional anecdote. The wording of this plaque is really significant. The original wording was going to say, on this site stood the former Meissner building. That's kind of a classic approach. And I said, absolutely not. There is no former Meissner. There is a Meissner, and here it is. Thank you very much. Thank you. He doesn't need this pedestal, but I like to introduce somebody as tall as well. I'm going to stand down here. I'd like to introduce Dr. Katie, who will give us an additional few words.
He's going to get even with me next week.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him. Patient confidentiality.
Well, thank you for asking me to say a few words. Because Bill Meissner was a wonderful, wonderful man, a wonderful, gentle, and kind soul. In this book that you may know about the history of the Deaconess, there's a wonderful picture of Bill Meissner that shows his gentle face, but you can suspect there's a twinkle in his eye and a humorous background to it, and along with, of course, Merle Legg and Brad Copeland. But if people want to look at that, you can just pass it along. Bill Meissner was a wonderful man, and he had an international reputation. The Armed Forces Institute of Pathology fascicles, AFIP fascicles, in thyroid disease, this is the 3rd edition, but the first 2 editions were put together by Shields Warren and Bill Meissner. And Ron Rosai and Rhonda Ellis and the authors, the editors of this, make a statement. Dr. Shields Warren and William Meissner, as co-authors of the 1st and 2nd series of this fascicle, provided with a succinct but superb model upon which to build, both in terms of text and illustrations, which are all due to Michelin betterment. Michelin. And but Bill Meissner was a recognized world authority on thyroid cancer, and I had the privilege of working with him, not only writing a bunch of papers. We wrote a bunch of papers between about 1976 and 1983, and Bill pulled out all the cases of thyroid cancer, totaling about 1,000 or more, and went through every single one, reviewed them all at the time. So he was an immense help and an immensely authoritative figure in doing all this. But he also represented the old-fashioned pathologist that we used to welcome in the operating room, because we'd pick up the phone in the old days, and Bill Meissner or Merle Legg or Ermela would arrive in the operating room in scrubs or some covering, and we'd discuss the case, and they'd go down to the end of the hall and do the frozen and come back, and that represented the kind of wonderful pathology presence that Bill Meissner represented so completely. He was the ultimate pathologist. He was also a wonderful administrator, ran an excellent department, and under the leadership of first Shields Warren and then Bill Meissner and Merle Legg, had one of the outstanding clinical pathology departments really in the country. But Bill Meissner was a wonderful person. When we worked together on these papers, he was forever tolerant, never lost his sense of humor or his willingness to pitch in, spent an enormous amount of time on these projects. And really, it was such a wonderful experience for me and for the other senior surgeons.